We have the JIVINITI Coalition and some special guests here with us today to ask Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to take the 31-day vegan challenge for January 2021 and pivot to a plant-based economy. Let's get right to it. Nivi Jaswal, what's this petition campaign all about?
Thank you so much, Naijha. We've all heard the breaking news yesterday that there is a new strain of the coronavirus in Britain that could be much, much more infectious. In response, more than 30 countries have banned or restricted travel from the UK. And this morning, US stock futures fell sharply as the 70% more contagious strain of the coronavirus raised concerns about global economic recovery. At the JIVINITI Coalition, we believe we need to ask new questions to get new answers. So we're inviting Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to go plant-based in January 2021. And we're urging the incoming Biden-Harris administration to take decisive, evidence-based, scientifically informed steps towards what we're calling a pandemic-resistant economy. So we've written an open letter. We've got a petition. We're urging these leaders to have a detailed, phase-wise plan to close animal factory farms, ban live animal markets, shut down fur farms, and exit the wildlife trade. We're also asking them to issue pandemic nutrition guidance based on Whole Foods plant-based nutrition science. And our segment one is all about women. Women represent nearly 2/3 of frontline workers and have been forced to show up on the job while schools are closed and childcare is unavailable. Rohini, Bajekal, I'm going to bring you on live for our first question. You're a nutritionist in London. Thank you for joining us. You're a board-certified lifestyle medicine professional from Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. Your Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, announced a lockdown yesterday. As a healthcare worker in ground zero, how are women healthcare workers dealing with this pandemic, and what is the impact on women's health? Tell us more.
Thank you firstly so much for having me. I represent Plant-Based Health Professionals UK, and we're really passionate about promoting the benefits of a plant-based diet, as well as obviously other lifestyle factors that are so important, such as sleep and emotional well-being. And we can't emphasize enough the impact of COVID-19, the pandemic, on women around the world. We know, for example, every single day, 810 women and girls die from preventable causes during childbirth. And we know that number is elevated and has been elevated in previous pandemics, and we expect it to be the same in COVID-19. The preliminary data shows that. So it's never been more important to protect women's health and to put women first. 70% of global healthcare workers and social care workers are women. So the pandemic has really hit women in many ways the hardest.
Well, I would like to say that this is a compliment to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. We wouldn't be asking this of her if we didn't think she gets it, because she does. She had the courage to speak out and urge Americans to reduce their meat consumption. I can't even express how much courage that takes for a politician to do that. Also, she supports Senator Cory Booker, who is a vegan from New Jersey's legislation to ban high-speed slaughter, which is horrific cruelty to the workers as well as the animals. So I want to go straight out to Nirva Patel, former corporate lawyer turned animal activist, who is also on the board of Farm Sanctuary and an executive producer of The Game Changers. Nirva, bring it together for us. Connect the dots. What is animal agriculture's connection to the pandemic, to Kamala Harris adopting a plant-based diet?
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. It's absolutely essential for Kamala Harris to adopt a plant-based diet. She needs to support what makes her unique. Her Indian and Jamaican ethnicity is based on a strong plant-based diet. She has the ability for the first time ever in the history of the United States to positively impact our food system, to reflect a more environmentally sustainable relationship with food. Now, when we look at all the problems in our world, we can't just look at climate change and think I'll attack climate change and help all of the efforts there and solve these problems. We need to take a One Health approach where we look at animals, humans and the environment, and look at all of the interconnectedness among those three categories. I serve on the board of Farm Sanctuary, and our mission is to end animal agriculture, which will definitely impact human health, as you mentioned, the slaughterhouses and the food system in general. We provide $20 billion as a government to food subsidies. Most of that is for meat and dairy. And if you look at the SNAP system that funds many of our marginalized children in schools, they're eating awful food. And it's keeping us in this health crisis that has positioned us so poorly to survive and, come out of this COVID pandemic.
As a businesswoman who owns a vegan restaurant and also runs a nonprofit, Black Vegetarian Society in Maryland, I'd like to ask Stephanie Redcross-West, founder of Vegan Mainstream, who's a vegan business coaching and consulting firm. What would you tell Kamala Harris as a vegan business coach?
I would tell Kamala that we're always looking for big moves. We're always looking for big change to happen in our world. Often when you take that one leap forward, what can happen is the world can follow. And what happens with businesses, I mean, what's great about being an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur gives you an opportunity to represent your local community. It creates an opportunity for us to bring veganism to our communities and also fund our communities. We can employ individuals, we can fund feeding programs, we can give back to our communities, we can support nonprofits. So being able to not only be a part of this as a movement, but be a part of it from an economic standpoint of not only leading the way and taking this big grand gesture and big step. What I believe Kamala Harris kind of represents, not just for me, but others out there, is seeing that representation. Often what happens is when you feel unseen, it almost feels like we don't exist. And the reality is in the US, in 2019, women of color have started about 89% of the businesses. So we are here, we're starting businesses. And by having someone like a leader like Kamala Harris not only represent us, but start to make those kind of moves out in the world that people can see, people can start to see that not only are we here as African Americans, as women, and even from my perspective as entrepreneurs, but also allow us as entrepreneurs to do more in our communities, empower us to do more, offer additional funding that we can use in our communities. Because the more we bring veganism, I believe, back to our local communities, the more we can create lasting change. And I believe a lot of that starts with having amazing leaders drive not only a challenge to the status quo, but start to look at the world differently. And I believe that Kamala Harris allows all of us to do that.
Thank you.
And speaking of leadership, what happens in the United States, despite what may have happened over the past few years, still pushes the world in a certain direction. So we are talking about a global issue because climate change is a global problem. World hunger is a global problem. I want to ask this question of Julie Wayne, economist and American environmentalist who's living in France, but who founded a nonprofit in India. The power of Kamala Harris, who has Indian roots, going plant-based would reverberate across India, even though people like to think of India as a vegetarian nation. Actually, the consumption of dairy in India is truly a crisis. Can you address all that? And unmute. Go ahead.
There we go. I unmuted and then I muted myself. Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Working in India, it's true that it's a very...
Oh, you muted yourself again. Unmute. There you go. You're unmuted now. Continue.
It's so strange.
Continue. No, it's muting. I guess we're having... I'll tell you what.
There we go. I think that's okay.
Don't touch it. There you go.
Okay. My computer's doing strange things. So anyway, you're absolutely right. There's a very, very specific problem in India. I would say a specificity in India, and that is dairy. That is the relationship with the cow. And it's spiritual, it's religious, it's historical, it's economic. And the government is definitely pushing this. The government has all of these women's empowerment programs in India, and they're pushing the dairy industry. The great majority of the dairy industry is in the informal sector. And of that, about 71% of the people who work in the dairy industry are women. So women are actually, it's actually quite sordid, because women are the ones who end up, inseminating cows and milking cows and separating the babies from their mothers and feeding this food that is absolutely not designed for them or for their families, to their families. And, we're seeing all of these chronic diseases that are skyrocketing. So it is a definite problem, all of animal agriculture. Our group is a vegan environmental agriculture. So we are trying to really connect the dots between people's health, planetary health, the environmental breakdown that we're seeing before our very eyes in India. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for that. And this is such an important topic because right now there is huge blowback against the choice of Tom Vilsack for Agriculture Secretary. He has huge connections to big meat, big ag, and many people are saying this is really a giant leap in the wrong direction. It's really backing up corporate meat and big food, big pharma, and really throwing the small farmers under the bus. So right now, I would like to open it up to everybody. We are going to go do a roundtable and ask each woman, and these are incredible, powerful leaders globally. We have a global panel today to look into the camera, say who they are and their title, and give themselves their credibility, and then speak directly to Kamala Harris and urge her to go plant-based and why. So we're going to start with the inimitable Naijha Wright-Brown. Take it away, Naijha.
Thank you, Jane. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, the Divinity Coalition, Sharon India, Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland, and Default Veg have curated a culturally relevant plant-powered Kamala recipe collection to inspire you to go vegan for the month of January 2021. Accept our invitation. Go plant-based in an effort to heal chronic illness, end systemic racism, address world hunger, reverse climate change, battle the COVID-19 pandemic and future pandemics, lead by example, and show the country that plant-based nutrition is now more than ever the American way.
All right. Nivi, take it away, and please look into the camera, not at your own reflection. Unmute.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Jane. I, Nivi Jaswal, president of the Versa Foundation and founder of the Divinity Coalition, want you, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, to go plant-based for the planet. This is not about politics. It is about policy. It is about pandemic response. It's about preventing future pandemics. And above all else, it is about planetary health. We invite you to use your power and influence to do right by our only home there ever was, that is Mother Earth. And to everybody who's watching, sign the petition. And next, I want to invite Salina Shah. Salina, please tell us why you want Kamala Harris to go vegan, and also what's it like being a senior executive who is an ethical vegan in corporate America? We want to know. We want to hear from you.
Thank you. So yes, so employers across America, will look to leadership, and that's why it's so important for Kamala Harris to go vegan. Employers are unaware of the challenges with being vegan in the workplace. And, while there's a big focus on diversity and inclusion initiatives, dietary inclusion and equity is not yet on the radar. So it's very important for, I would like to ask Kamala Harris, as a corporate executive and founder and CEO of Ahimsa Consulting, Kamala Harris, VP elect, to please go vegan, because it's important to demonstrate a willingness to be curious, to evolve, to learn, and to set a powerful, credible example for individuals and corporations alike to do the same.
Well said. Shall we go to Stephanie Redcross?
Yes, thank you so much. So As Stephanie Redcross-West, founder of Vegan Mainstream, I really want Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to go vegan because I really believe that the world needs to continue to see things that have never been done before. Kamala Harris has been an inspiration for many of us young girls, women of color, women who come from very diverse backgrounds. She has inspired us that we can be more, do more, and break glass ceilings. And I believe that our request to Kamala Harris is an opportunity for us to continue to see that many of the world's problems, whether it's poverty, whether it's hunger, whether it's climate change, animal cruelty, and really even some of the things we're seeing around the health crisis, a lot of that can change if we reimagine the status quo. So with Kamala Harris going vegan, I believe that's one of our first steps in that direction. So I really would love to invite her to go vegan, and let's start that process and continue that way of changing the world and showing people that we can do things new.
Wonderful. Rohini, Bajekal. What's your message for Kamala Harris? Who are you? What's your title and your message?
So hi, I'm Rohini Bajekal, and I'm a nutritionist at Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, I ask you to go plant-based for communities of color. We know that a plant-based diet is one of the healthiest choices you can make, and it can seriously reduce your risk, as well as put in remission some of the most chronic diseases, some of the biggest killers in modern day America, as well as all over the world, such as type 2 diabetes and heart disease. And we know that communities of color, particularly people all over the world and in these communities, are at higher risk of these chronic diseases. So by leading by example and by adopting a plant-based, we'll send a really
well
powerful
said.
message.
All right, we're going to move on to Nirva Patel. Nirva, take it away.
Hi, Kamala. I'm Nirva Patel. I live in Boston. I'm an animal activist, attorney, plant-based film producer, and animal rights researcher. Kamala, you're uniquely positioned to impact millions of American women and children who are subjects of corporate deception in our food industry. You have Indian and Jamaican roots, and those roots are based on a strong plant-based foundation. Please help us as Americans solve our health crisis and learn how the environment, animals, and people are all interconnected in a One Health aspect. And your plant-based mission will be incredible for the world.
Said.
And also
all right, we're going to move on to Julie Wayne. Julie, take it away.
So, hello, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. My name is Julie Wayne. I am the co-founder and director of Jeeva Bhavana. We're a vegan environmental nonprofit in India. And among our many goals is to create a climate and environmental justice, because we know that the most vulnerable people in all communities all over the world are the ones who are affected the first and the worst when it comes to environmental breakdown. So I would really like you to go vegan, because as the previous Attorney General of the state of California, a United States Senator, and soon to be Vice President of the United States, you are clearly driven by a life-affirming sense and a value of compassion, service, and justice. And going vegan is really embodying those very values. It's living those values and not just talking about them.
All right. Thank you so much. And I'll give it a shot. Hi, I'm Jane Velez-Mitchell. I'm a journalist and author. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, I really applaud you for urging Americans to cut back on meat. I know that took a lot of courage. You're going up against some very powerful moneyed interests. But given that you have that courage, I invite you to take the next step. You're not asking anybody to do anything in this regard. You're just saying, hey, I'm going plant-based for a specific amount of time. And that's the American way. You have a right to choose what food you want to eat. So if anybody attacked you for going plant-based, you could say, wait, I'm an American. I am expressing my right to go plant-based. I think through your work in Congress, through your collaborations with Cory Booker, you've seen the terrible negative impacts of animal agriculture, big ag, factory farming, concentrated animal feeding operations. This industry is a leading cause of climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, human world hunger, because animals eat so much more than they produce as food, and human illness like heart disease, which up until the pandemic was America's leading killer, as well as cancer. Processed meat is officially cancer causing, according to the World Health Organization. So I really urge you to take this step. It would send a huge message. Also, you be healthy. We need you. We need you healthy, Kamala. All right. Now let's open it up. We're just going to open it up to this incredible panel of women. Naijha, take it away.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. So what do you all think? What do you think Kamala's reaction will be to this invitation? Do you think she will even see it? Anyone feel free to respond. I think she'll see it.
We're going to pick somebody. Nirva, why don't you answer?
Yeah, I think she'll see it. I think she'll be compelled. I think she probably already follows a pretty strong plant-based diet, and this will encourage her to continue and to make that impact to Americans and be that ambassador and role model that we need. We desperately need in the White House.
Red Cross, I'd like to ask you about pushback. Obviously, listen, there was a Miss Montana. She won the Miss Montana pageant, and she's vegan. And they started a change.org petition to remove her crown. Obviously, follow the money. There's a lot of money to be made here. And so how should Kamala, if she adopts this challenge, which I certainly hope she does, how should she respond? How should she play this?
I think there's two different ways to play it. There's one piece of it, which is the health side. I think empowering everyone to reclaim their health and be able to not just reclaim their health, but reclaim the decisions that they make. Many of us know by being vegan, by being plant-based ourselves, we know how much that when we start to understand the food we eat and how that impacts our health, we start to be a part of our own solutions. But on the business side of things, or the entrepreneurial side of things, which is where I love to hang out, into my kind of little playground here, I also think there's an opportunity to help people understand that there's great ways that we can shift our industries. We can shift our worlds. We can do things differently. Just because we've done it that way before, doesn't mean we have to do it moving forward. Even if we take industries like solar as an example, there was a lot of struggle and pushback and challenges. And what we found over time is that it's created additional jobs. It's created different opportunities. And I really believe that when we start to look at the industries that we have in place, there are new products coming out that are allowing us to offer not only kind of industry-wide change, whether it's the hair care products that we use, whether it's the purses that happen in fashion, whether it's even interior design, all the way to the restaurants and the food that we eat. The idea is that there's growth here. There are jobs here. There are opportunities for people to even become entrepreneurs and start these small businesses. Sorry, I'm getting all fired up over here. So that people can empower themselves. And especially in this pandemic, we're in a place where people are struggling. They're not able to pay their rent. They're not able to do a lot of these things. So being able to look at new industries, I really think is a great way for Kamala to approach this, because it creates opportunity and growth for not just the US, it really does it globally and worldwide. Maybe we'll start here because that's maybe her domain, but the idea is we can be a beacon of light really globally.
I have to ask Salina Shah, we're in a pandemic. It's a zoonotic illness. It jumped from animals to humans. Even in the New York Times, there have been op-eds that say our toxic relationship, our species' toxic relationship with animals is what got us here. As Nivi mentioned at the top of this, you have new strains of the virus. You had mutations in mink that caused 17 million mink to be massacred in the most brutal fashion. Now there is an avian flu strain that's popped up in England, and they're using the word culling, but it's a massacre. There's no nice way to kill, hundreds of animals or even one animal who doesn't want to die. What can we do to make society, Kamala specifically, and society at large understand that at the heart of this pandemic that is destroying our world, in essence, it's our toxic relationship with the natural world and the wildlife and the other animals in it?
You know, interestingly enough, I think that, I mean, there's two things here. I think obviously there's the power of example that Kamala Harris can set, but there's also the future generation, right? If you look to the future generations, you see that millennials, 15% of millennials follow a plant-based diet all the time. They've already made the connection. They know the connection between animals, animal ag environments. If you look at college campuses across the country at the dining halls, there are a huge, vast array of plant-based options that are available. And so that's Gen Z. Gen Z is accustomed to having all these plant-based options. And so I think that if you think about the future of the country and the future generations, it gets a lot easier to have the confidence and take and go to this next step of pushing the country forward towards a more plant-based economy.
Nivi, you made this all happen along with Naijha Wright-Brown, a force of nature. And I want to ask you why you felt compelled to do this and what the big picture is. We are all women. The meat and dairy industry at its heart is the violation of the female reproductive system. As I like to say, none of these animals are making love on these factory farms. The industry term is rape rack. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're right. You know, it's here's the thing, Jane. You know, when we live a certain way, it becomes part of our vocabulary, right? What has become part of our vocabulary then seeps into our belief system. It seeps into our religion. It seeps into our, you know, practices of faith and so on and, you know, so forth. And what has happened is we actually come to accept it. We don't question it. So in fact, you know, the other day I was talking to somebody and they said, women have a maternal instinct and therefore they're better suited to go work in the dairy farming industry. Oh my goodness. So really what we're doing is exploiting the female of one species and using her for in service of exploitation of the female of another species. And that is exactly what it is. And people are not making that connection. Some people are, and then some people are not. And what we really want through the JIVINITI Coalition, and because this is a women-led coalition for that very reason, is for people of power, people in positions of influence, such as, you know, Kamala Harris. And then, you know, here's the other thing I would say. This is not necessarily a political thing. I don't want to make this into a political thing. This is a, you know, not a partisan issue. This is a, you know, this is a planetary health issue.
Yes, to wit, Tom Vilsack was chosen as the next agriculture secretary.
Right.
And choice you could possibly make. I'm going out on a limb.
Yeah. And so there's a different choice that we need to make out here, right? We are, if we're talking about during the acceptance speeches on November 7th, there were words that were used, which is evidence-based. We're going to unify. We're going to have science. We're going to have all of those things. Evidence-based nutrition science is and only is whole foods, plant-based nutrition. Evidence-based medical science tells us that this pandemic that we're surrounded by came from animals. And it's not just one, you know, one single live animal market in China. We have those around us. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're in the so-called first world or in the so-called other world, it's everywhere. So as long as we are challenging our own vocabulary, we are coming face to face, embracing, you know, our own ideas around carnism and speciesism, we will make a difference. And it starts with women, because we are the worst impacted in this pandemic, and also the females of other sentient species are the worst impacted. And if women don't help other women, I don't know who will, and which is why Kamala Harris needs to go plant-based.
Nirva, I want to ask you, Michelle Obama, when she entered the White House with Barack Obama, started a garden in on the grounds. She was talking about getting kids to eat fruits and vegetables. Somehow they changed it to "Let's move."
Yes.
What do you expect if Kamala adopts our invitation to go plant-based? What do you expect the blowback to be from big meat?
Yeah, you know, I think one of the main things Kamala has to do if she adopts a plant-based environment in the White House is to show that it is not expensive to be plant-based. You don't have to buy organic, expensive Beyond Meat burgers. It is the cheapest diet. If you have a diet based on, lentils and rice and fresh vegetables and fruit, that is a basic, cheap diet. So if she kind of promotes that and shows that it's attainable, then she's going to win. It's going to happen.
This is a great dialogue, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us. Again, sign the petition. Sign the petition. Change.org/plant-powered Kamala. Back to you, Nivi.
Yes, we're actually going to move on to our segment 2. We'll be talking about COVID-19 pandemic and systemic racism. We'll be talking about structural inequity and systemic speciesism. We just heard from our fantastic panel just now. Animal agriculture is nothing but commercialized and monetized carnism executed at corporate scale. Its impact on public health is evident in the epidemic that has been going on for years and years now. Our new segment 2, is actually going to be talking about all of that. Naijha, do we have Jasmine Leyva with us already?
There she is. Well, we'll start with who we have.
Okay. Yes.
I want to throw it out to Jackie Norman, because you and I have been talking, and you are a former beef and dairy farmer, and now you're vegan. You're in New Zealand. So this is a global panel of extraordinary women. And you can really bring home how meat and dairy is the violation of the sacred feminine, because we are asking the most powerful woman in the world right now, a woman who is a feminist icon. She has achieved the greatest stature of possibly any woman in human history at this point. The first female vice president elect, soon to be vice president. What would you tell her about the violation of the sacred feminine based on your experience having been a beef and dairy farmer?
Oh, there's so much that goes on. As a female working on a farm with hundreds of mother cows and their babies, I was expected to be a replacement mother for these calves and raise hundreds of dairy and beef calves intensively and artificially from newborn to weaning, which is around 2 months old. And it's extremely common for women to be given this role on calf rearing operations. In fact, it's preferred, as we are generally stereotyped to be thought of as the best carers due to our maternal instinct. I also had to assist in the abduction process of taking the cows from their mothers, which I hated. And as someone who was able to milk over 200 cows solo, was expected to rob them of milk, which was made and intended for their babies, not humans, on a daily basis.
And so you had an awakening. Just tell us briefly how that happened and how that might inform Kamala Harris, who has urged people to cut back on their meat. So she's on the journey.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much that at the time you're so conditioned, is so deeply ingrained, and I could not, I didn't make the connection. I was vegetarian for that whole time because I made the connection between meat and death, and I didn't realize, how much death dairy caused. So for me, these days, the exploitation of cows' bodies, and in particular their reproductive systems, both male and female, but obviously female as soon as they are old enough to breed until the end of their days, is just mind-blowing. The amount of harm and death the dairy industry causes. Like I said, I was vegetarian all through my farming years, but being vegetarian is not enough. I would actually say the dairy industry is far worse than killing animals for their meat, because the abuse and the exploitation is just so prolonged over years. And most of all, I can completely relate to how inherently wrong it is to deliberately impregnate a female cow and then take her precious baby year after year. I actually know what it's like to lose a child. 26 years ago, I gave birth to a son who suddenly and unexpectedly passed away 2 days old. So I know what it's like. And that experience never, ever leaves you. You learn to live with it, but you never recover. And yet I worked on farms with cows who had up to 14 babies taken from them in their lifetime, and then were killed when they stopped producing as much milk as they used to. So cows are pregnant for 9 months, just like humans. They carry their babies inside them for that long. And I honestly feel like we humans are the very devil for doing this to another sentient species. It is just so unbelievably cruel. And Kamala needs to know that. Everyone needs to know that.
And now we have the amazing Jasmine Leyva. She's a filmmaker, actress, and producer of The Invisible Vegan, coming out of California. Jasmine, what would you tell Kamala Harris about the public getting riled up over racial crimes in elections, but not so much when it comes to food justice?
Hey, good morning. Good morning. So I think that, everything that we get riled up about, it's by design. So you have to think, when the media is telling us, because the media programs us, as to what we should be concerned about. You have a lot of these big food companies, they have lobbyists and they have millions of dollars to pay politicians to sway things right or left. So they have influence over the media. So certain narratives are going to be looked over because they're not in the best interest of these millionaires. So we as a public, we have to start doing our homework, and we have to start connecting the dots and going like, wait, what we're doing with these animals for food, this is not in the best interest of ourselves, of our own bodies, because it's making us sick. It's causing a lot of these diseases and viruses that we're suffering from. It's not good for the planet. It's just not good for everyone. So why are we all engaging in something that doesn't serve us as a population?
I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Why is it important that we, especially women of color, talk about intuitive eating and unhealthy relationships with food in the midst of COVID-19, George Floyd, and the election?
So right now, you have a global pandemic that is sweeping over the country, and it's taking the lives. Every now and then a healthy person gets hit, but a lot of the people suffering are people who are already sick. One of the reasons why we have so much sickness in our bodies is because we don't realize we're ingesting the sickness. We are eating the sickness. We are breathing the sickness. This is why our body's immune systems can't fight things like this off. So when you have a time right now where people are going through panic because of a disease and social unrest because of everything that's happening, with the George Floyd, you have a lot of people who are stressed. So now you have cortisol levels going up, affecting people's health. And with that, you have people who, because they don't have comfort, you no longer have, let me go to the club, let me dance it out, let me go out with friends. You have people in isolation. What is the only comfort besides Netflix that one can have when they're in a situation like this? People turn to food. And that is something that they want to do, but something that, like we're all struggling. And it's almost like a psychological trigger that we're using to kind of cope with all of this. But what happens is when we start eating because we're stressed and because we're isolated, then we start turning to comfort foods that make us even sicker, that bring our immune systems down even more. So in the midst of this, we have to start talking about, okay, how can I make my body healthy? So if this comes upon us, then, we can get over it. And it's especially important for women of color, because when you look at, the medical system, the healthcare system, when women of color have higher mortality rates for everything, when cancer hits, when we're having babies, when every disease you can think of, we are more likely to die. So when you know that, you have to be more adamant about protecting yourself, because the government, the people that have these statistics that say you are more likely to die when you get sick, they are doing nothing about it. So we have to do something about it. We have to be intuitive about the way that we live, and that includes the way that we eat.
Thank you so much.
And Jasmine, thank you so much. Those are very powerful words, especially, when we know the statistics are out there, as you mentioned, that women of color, persons of color are disproportionately impacted, not just, during the pandemic, but also with the ongoing epidemics of, chronic illness and other things. I'm going to now call on to Angelicia Simmons. Angelicia, you are social legal activist. You're the founder of Fannie Lou Hamer Institute of Advocacy and Social Action. My question to you is, how do you see systemic racism present itself in the food system. How is veganism a solution, and how will Kamala Harris going vegan help at all?
So your first question was, how does it present itself in the food system? We have to look at even the food pyramid and what it requires and what it suggests that the average American should take in. And when we look at that food pyramid, we see dairy being a part of it. And when we see that, and knowing that women of color, Black and brown people, are normally lactose intolerant. And so we find that even that does not even include what would help us. And so it presents itself there. It also presents itself there because of the policies that are either made or not made. I am based in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Raleigh, North Carolina has a segment called Southeast Raleigh, which is highly marginalized area. It is becoming more gentrified. And with that and lack of transportation, the people who really need to get to Whole Foods for whole food plant-based eating don't have the transportation to get there, and they're being pushed out of their homes. And the death rate is higher because of the food apartheid. I don't even call it deserts. It's an apartheid that's there, doesn't lend them to even have a grocery store. And so it shows up because there ought to be policies that require at least some type of grocery store that has whole foods and produce there that communities can access and have those resources. When there's absolutely no grocery store, you just have five and dimes that normally sell liquor. You have right across the street from the oldest HBCU in North Carolina, you have a McDonald's where the college students can just run across the street and buy a $1 menu. When there are no policies that protect the most vulnerable people, systemic racism is built in that way. And if President-elect Kamala Harris were to go vegan, she has such a broad influence base. She is a member of a Divine Nine organization. She is a graduate of an HBCU. So she had so many resources to reach out to, and people look up to her because she is an influential person.
Yeah, Angie, that is fantastic. Tell me this, you mentioned this word food apartheid. What's the difference between a food desert and food apartheid?
Well, when we look at the word apartheid and we look at what happened, because it kind of generated or birthed out of South Africa, that was kind of like systemic racism in South Africa. And that's the name they gave it, the apartheid, just that segregation was right type of thing. And so here you see even lack of food resources in areas that are marginalized, like a Southeast Raleigh. And we call it an apartheid because it has no place where they can get resources. They'd have to go 30 minutes across town to get it. So it's just an area that's dearth with nothing. And so that's why I use the word apartheid. I use that. I know it's a strong word, but perhaps that can draw and engage emotions on why we need to think about the most marginalized people. As I think it was John Rawls, the philosopher, said, when we think about the most needy people, then everybody else on the top will be taken care of. And so I call it an apartheid because I think it is detrimentally wrong to leave these people without food resources, whole food resources.
Let's get Jacque Salomon into this. Thank you. What Jacque Salomon, from the indigenous perspective, activist and nonprofit founder from Phoenix, Arizona. Food sovereignty. Why you? Why should Kamala listen to you and the coalition?
Thank you for that question. First, I'd like to acknowledge that I had the privilege of living, working, and playing on the ancestral land of the Hohokam, the Ekimon Odom, and Odom people. Food sovereignty to me is the most important thing for two reasons. First of all, we need to be able to be independent. We need to be able to grow our own food. We need to be able to have access to food. And to build on what our colleagues were saying about access to not only food, but healthy food that is not filled with toxins and pesticides. And in order to do that, we can come together as community and start growing our own food. We can start growing our own food not for ourselves and our family, but also to build a network of food in these communities. The second thing that's most important is that we are facing a climate crisis because the land cannot sustain life anymore. And when we start going back to the land and we recreate environments where we can regenerate the land, like with food forestry, we are also regenerating life. And the most important thing is to honor the indigenous perspective, to honor the wisdom of the indigenous consciousness, the caretakers of this land, the land that has been stolen from them, the land that has been desiccated. We need to go, we need to support, and we need to bring back food sovereignty to the reservation. We need to undo what our colonized minds have done, have destroyed the land. We need to be grateful, we need to restore the land, and then we need to accept the wisdom, and we need to honor the guidance that is there for us as the caretakers of this land.
Now we are going to open it up and ask all of our incredible panelists on this global panel to speak into their camera eye, address Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, say who they are, their title, so give themselves their credentials, and express to her what you would say if you were talking to her about the need for Kamala Harris to take it to the next level and go plant-based. Why don't we start with Jackie Norman?
Yes, I am Jackie Norman. I am a writer and researcher for animal rights organisation Vegan FTA. I'm also an ex-dairy farmer of almost 2 decades here in New Zealand. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, I would love for you to go vegan because you are in a position of great power to help influence and aid the people of America, to empower them to advocate for the change the entire world needs, to teach communities how they can build their own resilience to illness and pandemics. In this last year, we've seen the pandemic hold the world captive, and at the same time, diseases such as heart disease, cancers, and diabetes, they're all still increasing. You can help to change this. We may not know what the future holds, but by leading by example and following a whole food plant-based diet, the people of the United States can help to build a healthier, kinder America. So I would love for you to do this for our health, for the planets, and for the animals. Thank you.
Fabulous. P. Angelicia Simmons, take it away, my dear.
Yes, I am P. Angelicia Simmons. I am the CEO and founder of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute of Advocacy and Social Action here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And President-elect Kamala Harris, I ask that you discern or you decide to go vegan because as my divine nine sister, I understand the powerful influence you have on this community, these hurting communities, and your influence can help save the lives of so many Black and brown people. We thank you for your work, but we just ask you to consider going vegan. Thank you.
Woo! Well said. All right, Jasmine Leyva, the Invisible Vegan, take it away.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Leyva. I'm the director of the Invisible Vegan, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. As a woman of color, a lot of us are not taught how to eat. We're not taught how to be harmonious with our environment. That is a lesson that is plaguing our planet because we didn't get it. And for you to be a woman of color in such a high place, I humbly ask you to show people what they can do and how they can do it. Lead us. We've elected you as a leader. So lead. And lead in the best way that you can.
Beautiful. And now we're going to go to Jacque Salomon.
Hi, my name is Jacque Salomon. I'm a mom and a health and human rights advocate. I'm a Native American activist. I'm a spiritual life coach and co-founder of a nonprofit here in Phoenix, Arizona called Seed Students Fire. As an Indigenous woman who has not only arrested but reversed several diseases, including type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and I've lost 164 pounds. I have lost a child 11 years ago, and my 11-year-old son, to a severe allergic reaction to a pharmaceutical. And I am asking Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to go vegan so no other mother will have to suffer what I have suffered. So that mothers can continue to hold their children at night, not worrying about losing them, or not worrying about orphaning them, because the wealthiest country in the world cannot put together the best nutrition guidance for its people. I'm asking you as a melanated woman to do what's right by us, to have a conversation so that we can have all the information. Because if we're not talking about plant-based nutrition, we're not talking about the evidence that's right in front of you, then we're not having real conversations about truth. We're not having real conversations about health and vitality, especially for our marginalized communities. So I'm asking you to please accept our invitation to walk your talk, to do what's right and tell the truth.
Beautiful. Absolutely wonderfully said. So, Nivi, let's open it up.
Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about these topics that are so pertinent and are in front of us at this point. So my question to all the panelists is, what is the one big reason why you want to request all our viewers today to be signing this petition? So, whoever wants to take a go at it, why is it important to sign this petition and have their say? And
let's pick someone, because people don't want to be rude and interrupt. How about P. Angelica?
Thank you. How did I know that I was going to be the one called on? Well, mainly because it gives people the power to live. So by signing this document, that even if they are not absolutely 100% plant-based yet, it puts on them the burden to consider the importance of going plant-based, having a plant-based diet. And so I hope that from signing it, it creates the impetus in individuals to go ahead and back it up and put some power behind their name, to even research it and look it up.
I have a follow-up question. How should Kamala Harris respond to the blowback? Because she's going to get blowback, even though it's her own personal choice as an American. She can choose what she wants to eat. That's what meat eaters always say. Hey, it's a personal choice, even though it's a leading cause of climate change, habitat destruction, wildlife extinction, and all sorts of human world hunger, things that affect other people. How would you suggest that she handle it if people start saying, listen, during the campaign, she urged Americans to cut back on their meat consumption, and she was accused of trying to take away people's burgers. So how do you think she should handle it?
Is that for me?
Yeah.
I would say that I would present, especially if she knows, some of the information from the China study, some of the information about the high cancer rates, ways that we can start looking at how we can live longer so that we can make sure we live out our purpose in the earth longer. And I think those statistics are there. And that is why she would need to tap into plant-based organizations to help provide and educate her herself so that she's able to respond to the blowback. I'm sure there will be blowback because everybody's talking about their constitutional rights. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. So I think that the best way is, one, demonstration, and two, her having the education in order to regurgitate that information to the American people of the why.
Thank you. Well, I will ask one follow-up question. Jasmine Leyva. African Americans are the fastest growing demographic going vegan. A lot of people are not aware of this. What is at the heart of that movement? In fact, there's a movie coming up called They're Trying to Kill Us, which is being led by an African American who is trying to show the connection between big money, fast food, and food deserts and illness in the African American community.
Well, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is, a lot of people think that African American people, or, whatever group you're talking about, like, they don't want to be healthy. And the thing is, like, no, everyone wants good health. So you have a lot of people, people of color who are suffering from certain diseases. Even myself, like, I was suffering from certain health ailments. And then I tried plant-based eating because I saw other people of color doing it. So it's like, oh, okay, this is for me. This isn't just an elitist thing, a white thing, a Hollywood thing. It's actually embracing me. And when I tried it, I was like, wow, a lot of these health things that I'm suffering from started clearing up. So then that's how I became interested. So I think that's kind of what's happening on an individual level to a lot of people in our communities. And if I can piggyback off of the other question that you asked, I think now for Kamala, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, it's difficult because when you are a leader, You know, in this country, a lot of leaders are trying to please the people. And while you have to do that to some extent, like one of the reasons why my mother was such a great mother is because she didn't let me do everything I wanted to do. She had to make decisions as a leader, and she had to do what's best for me. So I think with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, she needs to kind of take that stance, that motherly stance, where it's like, okay, America, I love you, and I have to do what's best for you. And that might mean not indulging in all of these things that you want to do that aren't the greatest for you and the planet that you live on.
Well said.
I'd like, oh, go ahead. I was just going to, do my little sell on the recipe collection we have here. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. My name is Naijha Wright-Brown, co-owner of the Land of Kush Vegan Soul Bistro in Baltimore, executive director of the Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland, the JIVINITI Coalition, Sharon India, Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland, and Default Veg have curated a culturally relevant plant power Kamala recipe collection to inspire you to go vegan for the month of January 2021. Please accept our invitation. Go plant-based in an effort to heal chronic illness, end systemic racism, address world hunger, reverse climate change, battle the COVID-19 pandemic and future pandemics. Lead by example and show the country that plant-based nutrition is now more than ever the American way. Thank you.
Yeah, and let me actually take it off from there, Naijha. Well said, and thank you so much for the shout out, for the recipe collection. The big reason why this is an awesome recipe collection, I urge absolutely all of you, everyone who's viewing this, to go check it out. We'll have to link it out as well. Is because we've curated it especially to reflect both the ancestral roots of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, so basically. We requested our JIVINITI Coalition member in India, Sharon India, that is led by Dr. Nivi Jaswal. They dipped into their recipe database of 600 plus recipes, and they put together a few recipes from south of India, the state of Tamil Nadu, where Kamala Harris's mom is from, and then Black Vegetarian Society of Maryland, which is led by Naijha Wright-Brown, who's right here with us. They also put together some vegan soul food recipes. So we're basically trying to say out here, we're honoring your ancestral traditions, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. We seek that you honor the ancestral diet of all humans in the United States as well as the rest of the world, because human beings are meant from a DNA standpoint, from a metabolic standpoint, to eat a whole foods plant-based diet. So we're seeking that you honor it, and we're inviting you to go vegan and sign that petition, because that is the most important way you can have say in ensuring your voice is heard.
And I wanted to just ask a question of Jacque Salomon. Jackie, the indigenous diet was 99.9% plant-based. How do we connect people with their genuine heritage to go plant-based, as opposed to fast food, which has only been in the world for, less than the time I've been alive. I mean, it was in the 60s that it started and didn't even take off till the 70s.
Thank you for that question. I think it's twofold. I think the first thing we have to do is we have to provide access. We have to come together as community, and we have to make sure that the people, especially that live on the reservations, have access to the healthy produce, have access to resources. And I think the second thing is respect. I think we need to stop challenging tradition, challenging culture. I think we need to speak truth. I think we need to maintain the conversation on health and restoring the land. I think we need to talk about not get lost in those red herrings of, well, are we challenging culture? Are we challenging tradition and ancestry? No, I think we need to talk about what's going on right now and how we treat the animals and how we treat the earth and how we treat the caretakers of the land. And I think if we can revitalize that ancestry and that wisdom and that connection to nature and provide the healthy foods and honor and respect these caretakers of the land, I think that that's the way to get in. And it's very difficult because we are not trusted. We that live on the outside, we have been part of a colonized system that has not only sabotaged their growth and sovereignty, but has also exploited them. So we also need to remember that, respect, and provide resources and access, and show up in a way that we're here to help you be your best. We don't have answers. We have opportunities to support you in becoming your best.
Wow.
Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This has been an engaging conversation. Please sign the petition. We got to move on to our next topic. Nivi, back to you.
All right, thank you so much, dear participants. This has been just an amazing, I have goosebumps, when I hear our amazing guests and coalition leaders speak on these topics. Moving on to segment 3, we're focusing on, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic and evidence-based medical science. We have a power panel put together with Dr. Aysha Akhtar, with Gwenna, with Meryl Fury, and we'll soon have Dr. Ruby Lincoln on as well. And we're going to be talking about the power of whole foods plant-based nutrition in battling the pandemic, preventing future pandemics. But we're going to go first, Jane. Your question, Dr. Akhtar.
My question is to Dr. Aysha Akhtar, and I have to say we've had a powerhouse women's panel, but when it comes to degrees, you win. You have not one but 2 medical degrees. You also have a master's in public health, and you were formerly way up there with the U.S. Public Health Service. So it's an honor to have you. Let's connect the dots between animal agriculture and the pandemics. And we know that there's now an outbreak of avian flu in England. We had heard about an outbreak of swine flu in China. And obviously, we're in the midst of a pandemic that jumped from animals to humans. It's a zoonotic illness. While there's some debate about exactly where it started, there is no debate about the fact that it is a zoonotic illness. Why is that so important to this conversation about diet, doctor?
Well, we're it's typical with public health agencies. All our effort really has been on trying to stop this pandemic from getting even worse, which is understandable to some degree, but there's still been very little effort to really focus on how to prevent the next pandemic. And unfortunately, we are probably going to see pandemics rise at a faster and faster rate. And that is really ultimately due to human behavior. It is our activities that predominantly are leading to our rise and risk of increasing infectious diseases. And most of these infectious diseases, these viruses, are coming from other animals. We know that 3/4 of emerging infectious diseases come from other animals, but it's our behaviors and it's our treatment of other animals and our encroachment upon wildlife habitat and the wildlife trade and animal agriculture, which are leading to a surge in these new infectious diseases. So you brought up factory farming, you brought up some of the bird flus and the swine flus that are circulating. No, that's nothing new. We factory farms throughout the world and animal agriculture in general throughout the world have seen different strains of bird and swine flu sweep across the farms year after year after year. And, this is no surprise. We keep seeing them. There's a H5N8 and an H5N1 bird flu sweeping across farms in the UK currently. These are deadly viruses. They have the potential to cause serious human illness. Whether these particular strains will, we don't know. But we do know that there was an H5N1 outbreak in the late 1990s in China, which caused death in 60% of the people who contracted the virus. So these viruses are very deadly. And we also know that the coronavirus came from another animal, likely originated in fruit bats, who are captured for the wildlife trade. So we keep talking about what we need to do to prevent further spread of this virus, but we haven't really talked about what we need to do to prevent the next one.
Very, very important point. I am always astounded when I look at the news coverage and I'm like, why isn't nobody talking about how to prevent the next pandemic? In fact, they even talk about, well, how we're going to treat the next pandemic. I'm like, hello, this is the entire mentality of our society. You cannot make money off a disease that never happened. Okay. You cannot sell pills to people who do not have an illness. And you don't need to create a vaccine for a pandemic that never happened. Prevention is the key. And going plant-based is the best prevention there is out there. That's our basic point. Nivi?
Yes. My next question is actually exactly on prevention. And I'm going to fill my question to Meryl Fury, MSNRN. She's president and CEO of Chicago-based nonprofit Plant-Based Nutrition Movement and a public health nurse for over 30 years. Meryl, pleasure to have you here. My question to you is, how have you seen food and nutrition play a role in the health of people in the neighborhoods you worked in? What is the situation there during the pandemic? Why are our communities of color so badly impacted? Your point of view.
Wow, you're talking to my heart, Nivi. Oh. So working in low-income areas, I primarily have been in like the northern edge of the Chicagoland area, right? So very stressed neighborhoods. And what we see there are what we see in a lot of other areas where people of color live. Very few fresh food sources, food deserts, poor grocery store access, and lots of fast food. Every fast food establishment known to man is within walking distance of wherever anybody lives. And lots of advertising for fast food and sugary things, drinks, stuff like that. So people fall prey to these marketing techniques. They have access to what they have. Transportation may be very difficult for them, or they're on a bus or something like that, where even if they can take the bus to get to a grocery store, it's hard to carry a lot of groceries on a bus. And if you have children, it's even harder. So what we see are, like I said, people falling prey to poor nutrition, and with it not being really robustly taught in schools or in healthcare facilities, people eat whatever is available, whatever's close, whatever's convenient, whatever they can afford. And most often that is not whole plant-based foods. It's fast food. It's a lot of sugar, a lot of salt, a lot of oil, heavy on the meat as well. So what happens is people develop lifestyle illnesses. They develop diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancers, autoimmune diseases, and have no real clear understanding of ways to mitigate that impact, that devastation, the burden of those illnesses. They continue eating the same way they've ever eaten, and the diseases continue. They wind up getting into the medical system, which unfortunately in low-income areas is not really strong. It doesn't have all of the facets and access that might be available in a well-off community. If a person is on some sort of state or federal assistance for insurance, their options are very limited. They can get maybe primary care, and beyond that, it gets a little bit tougher. So that's how our neighborhoods are doing at this point, you know, struggling with still the basic burdens, disease burdens that they ever had: high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, cancers, things like that. And that makes them more vulnerable to this particular virus.
Brilliant. And I would love to toss a question to Gwenna Hunter, if I may. You're working with vegans. You founded Vegans for Black Lives Matter. You are working with the Black Lives Matter groups and really introducing whole food, plant-based cooking recipes. Tell us about that, because that's so powerful. And what kind of reaction have you received, Gwenna?
Thank you so much, Jane. And yes, I'm currently working with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles. We provide them with once a month with a huge, I would probably say maybe 25 to 30 pounds of fresh, organic, and locally grown produce. And it's very important because, one, they're out on the front lines, risking their health. to march and protest and make change for the planet. So they're on the front line for, possibly getting any type of virus that could be out there. And so if they were to nourish their bodies regularly with these type of fresh, organic foods, it could actually, lower, can't, guarantee that it won't happen, but it can lower their actual risk. It's really important because one of the things that I'm finding out that I had no idea, a lot of them are saying, like, because sometimes I'll introduce different types of vegetables or different types of fruits, like a rambutan or, guava, or things that you don't normally find in typical retail stores. And a lot of them are saying, you know what, I'm only used to seeing apples, strawberries, and bananas. I never knew what a rambutan was. I've never seen a guava before, or I've never eaten this before. And so it's a very beautiful thing to be able to introduce different types of foods that grow on our planet to people for their health. It's been a real eye-opener and an awakening for me, even though I'm used to these type of foods, because everyone is responsible for their own level of personal evolution. So you can't just get to a point of where you're protesting, you're marching, and you're for systemic racism. Well, you're against systemic racism and you're trying to cut it. You have to keep leveling up in all areas of your life. If you're someone that's vegan, you've been vegan for 30 years, you have to level up as well and learn other areas of oppression that you can help eradicate as well. So it's been an awakening for all of us.
Thank you, Gwenna. We have Dr. Ruby here, a very good friend of mine. She's a nutritionist in Washington, D.C. Dr. Ruby, what would you tell Kamala Harris about the missed opportunity right now by not promoting a whole food, plant-based diet as an important step? One part with wearing masks, social distancing, and hand washing, and protecting ourselves from COVID, and while simultaneously addressing the leading causes of death in this country.
Yes, that's great question. This has been on my heart for a long time, and since the pandemic began, I started really emphasizing what you can do besides the things that they've been telling us is to boost our own immune systems so that we can handle whatever comes our way, but also at the same time, we are addressing those things that make this virus so much more deadly: the diabetes, the heart disease, the kidney failure, all of those things that people are living with, that we could be really making entirely huge impacts toward the health, especially of African-American people who are, we know have been hit the hardest by this, that we could be not only helping them survive through this pandemic, but helping them survive in day-to-day life by alleviating those conditions so that when things like this come upon us, we're not the hardest hit, that we're able to handle it and with our own bodies, basically by what we're putting on our plate. And this is absolutely free, telling people, here's a way that you can enhance your own immune system to handle whatever comes up in a better way that will increase your likelihood of survival and will increase your likelihood of survival after this pandemic, because you're no longer dealing with these lifestyle related diseases.
I would like to ask the panel about an issue that I think really goes to the heart. The vegan lifestyle has been portrayed as some kind of elitist lifestyle for the wealthy in Manhattan, Venice, California, and Berlin and London. When in fact, as somebody on the panel pointed out, it is the cheapest diet. You could survive on brown rice and black beans for a month, a sack each, and it would cost pennies per meal. We've proved that, and yet it's still this stereotype that's out there, and I think it's being promulgated by those who want communities of color and low-income communities to eat fast food, where the government subsidized a burger that would cost $25 probably in actual legitimate market conditions, but because of the US government subsidies, cost far less. And they're saying, here, eat this cheap food, when the truly cheap food is right there for the having, and yet it's being described as this elitist food. And I think that we have to stop feeding into that false notion. Who would like to take this? Maybe we go back to Dr. Aysha Akhtar, since you were formerly with the U.S. Public Health Service, Doctor.
Yeah, vegan food is plant-based food has been the food of poor people throughout the world historically. It doesn't have to be expensive at all. I grew up in large part on lentils and rice. That's sort of the basic diet of most Indians and Pakistanis. So it absolutely does not need to be expensive. The processed animal, plant-based foods now, the veggie burgers and things like that, those are in some ways luxury items. Even I kind of consider them luxury items. I'm pretty frugal with my spending. So yeah, you can have an incredibly nutritious, well-rounded, and delicious diet that is
I mean, the reason I say that is that we're seeing a lot of news reports about hunger, and then hunger groups are going out and feeding animal products to people when those people are suffering health conditions and the animal products are not good for them. Processed meat, which is what they're often fed, is officially cancer causing, according to the World Health Organization. Additionally, because animals are eating at least 36% of all produce that is produced globally in farms worldwide, and they produce far less as food, meat is the leading cause of world hunger. If we redirected the 97%, or let's say 75% of all soy that's fed to farm animals directly to humans, we could obviously go a long way toward ending world hunger. We're living in an upside down world where we're being told that vegan food is expensive and that we need to feed meat to people to end world hunger, when the opposite is true. And I think that it's really important that we start busting those myths that are perpetrated by industry. And I don't know who would like to address that, but
I think we can ask that of Dr. Ruby Lathon.
Absolutely. I work in these communities all the time, and I get these questions about, well, I can't afford, the exotic things, and I've never heard of that. And I was like, well, the recipes I'm giving you today are things that are made from chickpeas. We could make crab cakes from chickpeas. Okay, that's a 99 cent for a can of chickpeas. We do have to bust that myth. And when people are empowered with this information, I've seen them respond overwhelmingly that it doesn't have to be expensive. Yes, you can survive on, just greens that don't cost a lot. You can buy things in bulk that don't cost a lot. As you mentioned, pennies on the dollar for these meals. When we teach people and give this information in the communities that I work with, they've been extremely receptive in Black vegan communities, saying yes and sharing all of this information. And when they understand that this is not some fringe diet, it's not for everyone else, that it is for us, it's natural for us, then they're receptive. And when they understand that it can help reverse their diabetes, it can help alleviate many of the cancers they're dealing with, they jump on this. The information just isn't being put out there enough in a mass scale like our administrations could be doing. And I am all for that, because I've seen it change people's lives overnight, from those in lower income communities all the way up. It's for everyone. And the more they see people like us telling them that, then they're more receptive to believing that.
Meryl wanted to jump in.
Yes, Meryl, why don't you share?
Yeah, sure. So, I think there is some truth to what you were saying, Jane and Dr. Akhtar. There's certainly a whole set and industry built around creating vegan foods. I call them vegan junk foods that are high priced. They're higher ticket items, and our food science and manufacturers are dedicated to getting people to buy those products. I can't be mad at them for that. Real healthy food, what we refer to as whole food, plant-based or nutrient-dense foods, are really inexpensive, and they don't have labels. They're apple, it's a pineapple, it's a dragon fruit, it's a broccoli, it's spinach. Those are the things that people really need to be eating, right? The whole foods, the beans, the rice, the lentils, the whole grains, quinoa, all those. That's what we really need to be promoting. When you start looking at Impossible Burgers, oh yeah, heck yeah, that stuff is expensive. When you start looking at, manufactured fake cheese puffs and things like that, that's not health-giving or life-giving. And it is very expensive. When people start looking away from the whole foods and they go toward the processed manufactured stuff, I think that's where the myth lies.
Right. Thank you so much for that, Meryl. I have I'm going to ask a question of Dr. Akhtar real quick. Jane, you mentioned about governmental funding and subsidies and so on. But there's another specific issue, and I'm holding up the open letter which both Meryl as well as Dr. Akhtar have had input into. Highly recommend the viewers go check out the open letter that we've written. So Dr. Akhtar, we've mentioned in the open letter, you've written, governmental funding should prioritize methods like organs on a chip that are based on human biology. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my organization. It's the Center for Contemporary Sciences. I'm the president and CEO. We just launched this May, so we're a brand new organization. And we're a scientific organization to really showcase why we need to move away from animal experimentation and instead use much more innovative testing methods that are based on human biology. We know that about anywhere between 90 to 95% of the drugs and vaccines that pass animal tests, as well as traditional other types of laboratory tests, end up failing during the clinical trials, during human trials. And we know that in large part they fail because of safety and effectiveness problems that were not predicted by the animal tests. So in other words, we know that the animal tests are not really that great at predicting what we're going to see in humans. They're not reliable. So we need much better tests, in addition to the fact that these animal experiments are incredibly cruel. And so what we're seeing right now with the vaccine, we talked a little bit about at the beginning of this segment, we talked about some of the mutations we've been seeing. And now there's a lot of concern that there's been some mutations seen in the UK, especially in the UK, but also elsewhere in Europe, including Denmark, some mutations in the coronavirus. And what we're seeing are mutations in the spike protein of the coronavirus. So this is the protein that the virus uses to enter human cells. And when there are mutations in that spike protein, that could mean that the virus has an easier ability to enter human cells, and it can mean that our immune system may not be as effective. We may not recognize these mutated proteins, and it can mean that the vaccines that are currently being rolled out may not be as effective or could be potentially ineffective against these new strains. The problem with viruses is that they're always mutating. They will always be mutating. And so what we at the Center for Contemporary Sciences is really trying to stress is that in order, if we're not going to address how to prevent viruses, we at least need to know how best to treat this current pandemic. And what we need is to constantly be able to catch up and adjust to new mutations in the virus by using the best, most reliable, the fastest testing methods possible. And that means we need to be using, and governmental agencies need to prioritize funding of these human-based testing methods. These are like human organs on a chip, for example, that have a potential to be much more reliable, much more effective, so that we can roll out new vaccines with greater confidence in their safety and their effectiveness, and roll them out faster to adjust to mutations in the virus.
Excellent point. And the commonality here is that there's a lot of reactive thinking. So again, we have to be about preventing the pandemic. Gwenna, your thoughts, getting back to the idea of food deserts and how plant-based food is being falsely portrayed as elitist expensive food, when a sack of beans, a sack of quinoa, a sack of rice could last you for months. And we could really help those who are struggling with hunger right now in America and around the world if we all move plant-based.
Yeah, so I wanted to share a story. A few years ago, when I first came to LA, I was using an EBT card. And, one of the best kept secrets of eating well, no matter how much money you have in your pocket, whether you have a lot of money or very little, is the 99-cent store. You can go there. I would go there and I would buy a package of mushrooms. I would buy a package of spinach. I would buy pita bread, the little 3-sack of avocados. They have organic basmati and jasmine rice in the 99-cent store. You can get pasta that's organic. You can also get spaghetti noodles that are organic. There's so many amazing things that you can buy and eat well. So it's not like you have to just eat beans or eat something that you really don't want to eat all the time. There's a variety of so many different foods that you can supply your body with in the 99-cent store. I would get, most of all of them have like veggie burgers for 99 cents. They have egg rolls, all types of different delicious types of foods that you can get. You go in there with, maybe $5 or $10 and you can, eat for several days. So I just wanted to share that information that you don't have to spend a lot of money. And like I said, just go to your local 99-cent store, and the things that they're constantly upgrading the store shelves with will absolutely blow your mind.
Wow. Well, right now we're going to go to our Speak to Kamala. We are asking all of our panelists, this is a global panel from around the world, to speak into their camera eye, say who they are, their titles, and ask Kamala Harris to go plant-based and explain why they should. Let's start with Dr. Ruby Lathon, nutritionist out of DC. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Ruby Lathon, holistic nutritionist, and I would love to ask Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to go vegan for 30 days, to experience the benefits of that, the health benefits, the awakening of that, and so that she can identify with how much this could benefit our communities, our nation going forward, especially while we're dealing with this health crisis, how this could not only address that, but address the ongoing health crisis that has been affecting people of color for a long time.
Beautifully said. And why don't we go to Gwenna Hunter next?
Hi, my name is Gwenna Hunter, founder of Vegans for Black Lives Matter. I would like to ask Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to go vegan because you've already done it before. I've heard interviews where you've already tried it for several days, or one time you were doing it right until 4 p.m. Every single day until you got on the road to do your campaigning. And you already know the health benefits of it. It's the right thing to do. And you're already setting records. You're the first woman of color as the Vice President of the United States of America. Keep going. Be the first one to shift this planet into a new system of how we look at food and how we change our diet. Thank you.
Beautifully said. Meryl Fury, take it away.
Hi, my name is Meryl Fury. I'm a registered nurse and president and CEO of Plant-Based Nutrition Movement. I would like to say to Vice President-elect Kamala Harris that her deep understanding of the role that nutritious, whole food, plant-based, nutrient-dense eating can do in the role of disease prevention is critical. It could mean the difference in how we handle a pandemic and any other existential threats that we might face. The voice of evidence-based nutrition has been missing from national health policy for way too long. People have lived and died with this knife at their throat. Now is the time to change that. And she has a perfect pulpit, a perfect place to speak from to get that done.
Beautifully said. Wow, so eloquent. Nivi and Naijha, you put this together. First, while we're just wrapping up, I want to say kudos to you for extraordinary work putting together this global panel. I am so inspired by all the women on this panel. We can change the world, and we are changing the world. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for making this happen. Naijha, you are a force of nature. And Nivi, you're brilliant. I mean, you're both brilliant. I'm blown away by everything you've put together. So I defer to you now. Naijha and Nivi, take it away.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for joining us. It was amazing commentary. And if it wasn't for Jane and the press release, I would have never met Nivi. Nivi, again, yes, we're friends forever now.
Thank you so much, Naijha. And thank you, Jane. Without your support, both of your support and brilliance, this wouldn't have happened. And thank you so much, Dr. Akhtar, Dr. Lathon, Meryl, Gwenna, and all the other amazing power-packed women who were here for our event, and also the viewers. The only thing I'm going to say is this is a social justice movement. This is a policy change movement. This is a challenger movement. Each and every woman on this panel, in the coalition and in the world, has the power to be heard, has a right to be heard, has the power to be a challenger brand, because that's what women do best. So come together, sign the petition, read our open letter that we painstakingly put together, and have your say. And I'm hoping that this is a call for not just women leaders, international influencers like Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, but also a big shout out and a big opportunity for other women leaders like, I don't know, Serena Williams or Meghan Markle or Oprah Winfrey or Beyonce. Doesn't matter which field you're in, doesn't matter what industry you're working in. If you're a woman and you have a voice, you have a seat at the JIVINITI Coalition table. And I hope that you will reach out. Well, thank you so much to everyone. We're wrapping up this event, and have a great day. Sign the petition. Thank you.